What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about 5 players that I think you guys should be looking to sell off of your Dynasty rosters. Yesterday I went through my top 5 buys. Now we're shifting over to the players who I think are just a little bit overpriced at this point. I think it makes some sense to pivot, either tier up or tier down at the same position, or just pivot off of that position entirely. As always, if you guys have any questions, drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. But let's just dive right into it. And starting off with my first sell here, it's going to be Jordan Love. And he's currently being drafted as the quarterback 10 on Keep Trade Cut, which is about a mid-round 2 startup pick. And Jordan Love's value has just completely skyrocketed over the last year. And I don't necessarily think that like mid-round 2 is an insane price. Like, I'm not way lower on him in terms of like startup value, but I would just so much rather try to tier up. And if Jordan Love's going mid-round 2 and you have a lot of these other quarterbacks going like early round 2, it may not seem like that big of a difference, but I do think value-wise, the difference from like Jordan Love to the guys going ahead of him, in my opinion, is pretty significant. So he was the quarterback 5 in points per game in his first year as the starter, and I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he improved on his points per game in 2024. He should be better with a full year of experience. He has a ton of young weapons with Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Wicks, Dobbs. You have the tight ends, Musgrave, Kraft, bringing in Josh Jacobs, drafting Marshawn Lloyd. So I do think his situation around him should be improving. He also should be getting better. But I do just think his upside's a little bit capped. Looking at his rushing production last year, rushed for just under 250 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, had 32 passing touchdowns, which was awesome. But Jordan Love accounted for 36 of the Packers' 42 touchdowns. I don't think that's super sustainable, so I wouldn't be shocked if the passing touchdowns go down. The running backs pretty much, had no luck in the touchdown department. I don't think that's something that's going to carry over, year after year. Even though this was Jordan Love's first year as the starter, we do have to keep in mind that he sat a few years, so he's 25 years old. So it's not like this is like a 22, 23-year-old who should be getting significantly better, throughout the rest of his career. So I would much rather try to tier up to a higher upside player, someone like an Anthony Richardson. Kyler Murray on Keep Trade Cut is actually just straight up valued behind Jordan Love. If I could give up Jordan Love for Kyler, I would be all over that one. I think Justin Herbert is also someone I would tier up to. Even though in startup value, Love is within a few spots of guys like Herbert and Richardson, I do think it's just a great opportunity to tier up, to get into like that elite group of quarterbacks, because I'm not sure how much more Jordan Love can kind of build on his value here. Now, another player I'm going to be looking to sell, it's going to be another quarterback. It's going to be Tua. He's currently valued as the quarterback 16, like around 3-4 startup pick. I just think this is a really expensive price for a player who doesn't have a ton of upside. Looking at Tua's situation, he's in, pretty much a dream spot for a quarterback here. Great offensive-minded head coach with Mike McDaniel. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. You have an amazing run game with guys like Devon Achane, Mostert. Obviously, Achan's going to be the guy of the future there. And Tua has still only been able to deliver QB9 and QB16 point per game seasons. He has to just be so dominant as a passer to give you any sort of fantasy ceiling, because he pretty much gives you nothing on the ground. He's one of the only like true statue quarterbacks that are left in the league. The last 2 years, we're looking at 144 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns. Like, the rushing production is just not going to be there. Also have to point out that Tua has not been extended yet, and I'm not saying that an extension won't happen. It, certainly could. But if you're the Dolphins and you weren't close to winning a Super Bowl with him on his rookie deal, he's not in like that elite quarterback tier where you do feel comfortable giving him, a huge contract. Like, is this extension like a lock to come through? Is he locked in to be the Dolphins quarterback of the future? I'm not so sure. I think we also have to remember the concussion problems. This was something that kind of lowered his value heading into last season. Seems like people have completely forgotten about it. Obviously, that would be a terrible situation if he had to retire because of that, but it is just added risk we have to keep in mind here. And then I also just feel like Tua is being valued like a long-term fringe QB1, and I'm just not super confident that's the case. I think there are just a few different ways where he doesn't end up being a long-term quarterback. And even if he is a long-term quarterback, there's not a ton of upside with his production. If you are looking for that like fringe QB1 production, the QB2 on your roster, I would be looking to tier way down to guys like Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, the veteran guys who maybe don't have a ton of long-term security, but they're just going to be so much cheaper. I think they're going to pretty much match the production. And like I said, the price is just going to be so extremely different that I think you could get another really solid piece on top of it. So not a huge fan of Tua here. Would definitely be looking to move off of him. Then we're going to shift over to the tight end position, and I wanted to talk about TJ Hawkinson here. He's currently a 4th round startup pick, which in my opinion, it just seems crazy. It seems very, very high. He's going to be 27 years old when the season starts, which isn't terrible. Still pretty young at the tight end position, but I just don't think you're going to be getting a ton out of him in 2024. He's coming off a torn ACL that happened way late in the 2023 season. So probably best case scenario, he's returning week 5 area. It could definitely end up being longer than that. And then I think you're also probably just looking at the number 3 target on either a Sam Darnold-led offense or a rookie J.J. McCarthy-led offense. With the age, the injury, I just have a tough time picking him here as a 4th round startup pick, especially because he has not gone out and shown a top tier ceiling. If he was a dude who's had a 16 plus point per game season, then I get it. He was the tight end 2 in points per game last year at 14.6. He was giving you a solid season, but it still wasn't that game-breaking production we've seen, the Travis Kelce production, Mark Andrews the 1 year, Darren Waller I think had at least a year of that type of production. We have not gotten that out of TJ Hawkinson, and I don't know if we are going to. I would much rather tier up to a dude like Kyle Pitts, who I think is right about to break out, or if you want a more proven option, give me a guy like Mark Andrews straight up, who at least on Keep Trade Cut is valued behind TJ Hawkinson. So I think there are some ways you can, maneuver within the tight end position, but in general, just kind of trying to pivot off of TJ Hawkinson here. I feel like he's being valued as a high-end, elite ceiling tight end option, and I just don't think that's what we're going to be getting out of him throughout the rest of his career. And then 2 wide receivers to wrap us up here. The first one's going to be DK Metcalf. He's currently valued as the wide receiver 20, and it just seems like the fantasy community is viewing him as a guy who has a higher ceiling than I think he does and, kind of has had throughout his career. In 2020, that was Metcalf's big year. He was the wide receiver 10 in points per game, averaged 17 PPR points per game. But since then, he has been the wide receiver 20, 24, and 22 in points per game. So he had 1 wide receiver 1 season and then just 3 straight back-end wide receiver 2 years. And that's just not difference-making production at the wide receiver position. Back-end wide receiver 2s through wide receiver 3s, the point per game difference is really nothing crazy there. And I also don't think this is a spot where his future outlook looks amazing, right? You still have Tyler Lockett there. You have JSN, who should be emerging. It's not like they have a quarterback waiting in the wings, a top prospect. Geno didn't look as great last year. Who knows what they have going at the quarterback position in the future. So within the same area of DK Metcalf, I would take guys like Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers. I'd even take younger options to kind of re-roll, guys like JSN, Jordan Addison. You probably could get something on top for those players. But just for my opinion, at the wide receiver position, if you're not providing that, elite upside and you haven't done it over the last few seasons, I would much rather just re-roll on some of these younger guys. And maybe in the short term, Addison and JSN are wide receiver 3s fantasy-wise instead of a back-end wide receiver 2. The difference is just not that extreme for me. Plus, you're going to get them for at least a few more seasons. So Metcalf is someone I'd be looking to sell off on. And then the final player here, also a wide receiver, it's going to be Terry McLaurin. And pretty much throughout his entire career, Terry McLaurin has been a better real-life wide receiver than a fantasy option. But at this point, he's kind of running out of time, as sad as it might be. He's 28 years old. He's never finished better than wide receiver 20 in points per game. And he has a rookie quarterback coming in now. Who knows if Jane Daniels pays off? Maybe he ends up being amazing. But you have to expect it's going to take him a little bit, to get settled in as a rookie. And then even if he does hit, Terry's 29, 30. You're already starting to talk about him potentially falling off in terms of his ability. In the same area where Terry McLaurin's getting drafted, I prefer both the younger guys and the veterans that are going after him. I'm not even super high on dudes like Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs, but I would take either of those dudes over Terry in Dynasty. Also give me guys like Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson. I think Chris Godwin's super high on him, talked about him as a buy low option. Deontay Johnson, potential wide receiver 1 for the Panthers, fine with that. You could also give me younger guys, Christian Watson, Rashee Rice maybe if the dude's panicking about his legal stuff. Even rookies like A.D. Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette. I'm not even overly high on those guys, but I'd still probably take them over Terry McLaurin. I just think we're at the point where we're probably not getting a high upside season out of him, kind of similar to the Metcalf situation, but even more extreme, where, maybe Jane Daniels plays great and Terry McLaurin's a wide receiver 2 for the next 2 seasons. All right, it's okay, but let me just re-roll on some of these younger dudes or take veterans who have shown that high ceiling, a Cooper Kupp, a Stephon Diggs, players like that. So that's going to wrap it up for my 5 Dynasty sells. We had Jordan Love, Tua, TJ Hawkinson, DK Metcalf, and Terry McLaurin. If you guys want to run any trades by me, I'd love to hear them. Drop them down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.